Students, welcome. Hi, it's a video for Econ, Chapter 3, Principles of Micro. All right, so I do have other videos that I've linked in there as well, beside me running through the PowerPoint, which I will do in a voiceover here soon. So if you want to go ahead, pause my video and take a second and pull up your PowerPoint. I will kind of run through the PowerPoint. I realize it's a little bit cumbersome way. I'm still trying to work these PowerPoint in with voiceover. And my dog is voiceovering me as we speak. All right, so I'm going to go through hold on, let me pause this. All right, so chapter 3, interdependence and gains from trade. All right, so now that you have pulled up your slides, why do people and nations choose to be economically interdependent, and how can trade make everyone better off? So we discussed this a little bit in Business 101 if you have had Business 101. And so, thinking about where all our different items come from, obviously we trade on many different levels. The example in the PowerPoint talking about, our phones, our shirt, our coffee, our hair gel, all of those things that we enjoy, right? And the one principle in micro or in economics in general is this idea of trade can make everybody better off. And so the example given in the slides talks about two different countries, US and Japan, and two different goods, computers and wheat. And the resource is labor. Now, this is a very simplified model. However, what you will notice is that a model, which we learned earlier, can easily be uploaded to represent a larger picture. But we can use the model because it's easy, it's flexible, and it really gives us all that we need to know to have a basic understanding. All right, so there's things that we look at when we think about a country being self-sufficient versus trading. So we already talked about the production or the frontier, right? The PPF. So, for example, in this situation, we may have 50,000, if everybody's working that lives in this country that we are in, there's 50,000 hours of labor, right? Available production per month. This can produce, or producing one computer requires 100 hours, producing 1 ton of wheat, 10 hours. All right, so we use the PPF, which you already know what that is and what that looks like, to basically, and this is slide 7, to look at our opportunities, right? You could produce all wheat or all computers, and it's a finite amount. And so what we learned earlier from the PPF is that things that are underneath our line are inefficient. Things outside the line are not possible. Well, what you can do from trade, once you get that going, and then we draw Japan, you will see that we will be able to reach places that are not possible if we were producing just on our own volition, right? Or if we were just being self-sufficient. So the other option is Japan, and they have a different amount of labor hours and computers, and we look at those two different slopes. And so if you're following along the slides on 14, it shows US's production. If we were producing a certain amount, which would be 3,400 tons of wheat, requiring 34,000 labor hours, the remaining 16,000 labor hours are used to produce 160 computers, right? We're on the PPF, we're doing good. And there's also Japan's situation where they use all of the 30,000 hours to produce only computers. Now we talk about exports and imports, right? Sending things out of the country, bringing things into the country. Well, guess what? We have this thing called consumption with trade. So if you look at slide 18, it shows us an example and a chart of what it would look like without trade, and then what it looks like with trade from importing and exporting, also with Japan. So as you scroll through these next few slides, what we move up to then, as you may want to pause and look through the next few slides, and then looking at slide 21, we start to talk about something called an absolute advantage. And this is the ability to produce a good using fewer inputs than another producer. And so absolute advantage is one idea, right? But the gains from trade come from something called a comparative advantage, right? And this involves something, an actual, another principle is brought in called opportunity costs. And that's where we see this idea of comparative advantage, right? The ability to produce a good at a lower opportunity cost than another producer, meaning there's less of a trade-off. to produce one item than another. And so you could have an absolute advantage, but you may not have a comparative advantage, right? And so when we think about our comparative advantage and that trade can make everybody better off, scroll through these slides, read through the chapter, and then I will have a couple links to different ways of looking at absolute versus comparative, and hopefully those will be fulfilling for you for chapter 3.